today, hopefully with our new show, The Kitchen Table, we're going to try to have a discussion with firefighters from the job, from the floor, just like you, to see how they feel, what's on their mind, and to have an authentic and genuine discussion about some of the issues that we're all facing. So I want to welcome you to the IAFF station and our kitchen table. I think I'll begin, if I can, is just ask each of you very quickly, just tell our audience who you are. Dave, we'll start with you.
I'm Dave. I'm a firefighter in Washington, D.C. Been on the job for about 8 years. Came on when I was 22 and live and work in the area.
Great. TJ?
I'm TJ, Tom Johnson. I'm a captain with Fairfax County. I've been on the job 27 years, but my tenure is divided between two departments. One, Canton Fire, just outside of Boston, and then the past 15 years I've been here in Fairfax County, shift leader, captain, I ride an engine.
Great. Kelly?
I'm Kelly. I'm from Prince George's County Fire Department. I have 9 years on the job, and I'm a lieutenant at Station 26, engine truck company, and second generation. Father was in the Prince George's County Fire Department, retired from there.
Second generation.
Yep.
Wow, what a great privilege. God bless you for that. Calvin?
My name is Calvin. I'm here from work from Washington, D.C. I'm currently a fire inspector. Been doing that for 2 months now, but before then, was a technician, drove a truck in Tillett for 20 years.
And you're Tillard.
Yes.
Okay, that was my old job.
Yeah.
All right, great. I always said, great job, no addresses.
Yes.
Didn't have to learn addresses. Steve?
My name is Steve. I'm with Naval District Washington Fire Department, local IAFF, F121. Been on the job for about 11 years. I've worked for several different departments under the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. Been a firefighter and a fire inspector. Currently a firefighter now, and that's pretty much me.
Okay. Well, I think for today, one of the things I'd like to discuss, something we spend a lot of time here at the IAFF trying to figure out how can we better communicate with our members. And I guess the real first question is, are we communicating with our members? And in order to determine that, it's like, how do our members receive their information? How do they want to receive their information? So how do you right now become informed in general?
I'd say probably social media the most. I know with our local, we found that a lot of our members in our local will use Facebook versus the actual local website. So it seems like social media is kind of the go-to with us.
Personally, I don't use Facebook.
Okay.
My family does, my wife does, other people do. I don't use it.
Yeah.
And to get to the root of that question, I think you will always have to use multiple mediums, because in the fire service we got guys and girls coming in at 18, 19 years old, and then we got some of us that are slightly older than that, more seasoned.
So
that works
so
for
to
me.
that point then, TJ, that says to me, do you actually read the IAFF magazine?
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. You know, you have the hot shots, you have the pictures of locals, and the stories that tug on my heartstrings and things that I can relate to. Yes, I do.
Kelly? Dave? Calvin? Your thoughts?
We have the Facebook and the email and things like that. So there's multiple places that they can get information to us. If you don't do Facebook, you can come to a meeting. If you don't do meetings, one of the shop stewards will be stopping by your station while you're in house. And that gives you a little bit where you can complain a little bit more, maybe some, kind of get it off your chest. When you're in the station, you feel a little more at home. So that gives another medium. Sometimes you try and be a little more proper at a meeting, or, when other people are looking around. But if they come out and they actually talk to you, then it's a little more calm and you can vent.
Okay, Dave, Calvin.
I kind of agree with both Steve and TJ. You've got, obviously this is one of those jobs where you deal with multiple generations, and even though a lot of people who are older are starting to get on Facebook and things like that and really pay attention, it's good to still have, I still read the magazine when it comes in the mail too, and put out, we put out meeting minutes and hang them on. We have a, local bulletin board in every firehouse, like I'm sure, they do around the country. And there's guys who, will read the bulletin board. There's guys who will pay attention to the emails. There's guys who will, look out there. And you do see that, we're in this age now where you find out everything immediately right away. Guys' phones beep, and then, all of a sudden, you don't get the paper delivered to the firehouse anymore because they're like, why should we bother paying for the paper if everyone's just going to look at their phones or go on the internet, read the paper? So I think it is a challenge though, because you'll still, you'll work at one firehouse in one battalion, and then the next day you might be working overtime somewhere else, and someone's heard a completely different version of the events or heard about this, and it's, there's always we're at the kitchen table, which is one of the famous places for the rumor mill and that sort of deal. So you never, I think it's important, at least from the international's perspective, to take sort of a multifaceted approach to disseminating information, whether it's through Facebook and social media outlets or the old-fashioned ones, or just emails or guys who go to the website and look for resources, find out.
Calvin, senior member, been on the job a while. I think they're talking about you and I a little bit here, but how do you get your information communications?
I usually
prefer
use
to.
everything possible. I'm just one of those ones who will use the internet, paper. It doesn't make a difference for me. But like you said, it's a generational thing. Newspaper, I still read the newspaper. I gotta sit at the table and read the newspaper. That's not the same on the internet or anything. But as far as disseminating information, a lot of people, I think they take it for granted what the international does, and they just basically base everything on the local. And they try to get all their information from there, not knowing about the bigger picture of what Congress is trying to do, what other states and locals are doing. So they're just concerned for what is my local doing, and that's fine for me. And not understanding, you need to know everything that's really going on and how it's going to affect you in the future.
Something that at least I think I've personally detected, but I'd like all of you to comment. We talk about this kitchen table, and I have said that kind of the power of our union is, if you will, our culture. And that is, unlike most jobs, we work in crews. We work on shifts. It really is a family. Mm-hmm. It's our firefighting family. And there were, for all of time, going back, over the many, many years, we had the kitchen table that we've all talked about. Okay, that's where we gather, have our meals together, and talk and discuss. We had a day room. Typically, we had a day room. It had a TV. And we'd all go in the day room, and then time would permit, and we'd select whatever show or sports or whatever to watch. And we slept in dorms. And I'm really glad that we have cubicles now, and I think it's wonderful that there are news stations with individual bedrooms. But there was something about the dorm, point being that we were always together. And when I would go into stations and see everyone gathered at the table, it was a way to have a discussion like this. But it seems like in the last year or so to me, and I'm just curious, this is what I want you to comment on, that when I go into a station now, I see us scattered more. Mm-hmm. And I see everybody kind of in their own corner, their own cubicle, or their own chair. And of course, I'm not complaining about devices. I have one, I use one, but they're all looking at their mobile devices, phones, pads. And so I'd like to get a sense from you. Do you sense that where you work? Is that affecting the kind of the connection, the culture, the togetherness that we've had for so many years over our history? Just your thoughts.
I would agree with you, and I think that happens based on the shift leader. I am a shift leader. We do not use cell phones when we're at the table. I say it's family time. If we have a guest, a guy detailed or a girl detailed in for callback or exchange or whatever, I tell them right off the bat, phones are off during lineup. Okay, it's family time. We're eating supper together. We're all going to talk. We're going to look in each other's eyes, and we're going to have some family time. That's just how it works.
Thoughts?
Well, for that to happen, you got to have a multitude of subjects when you're talking. Because, again, the generational gaps. Mm-hmm. The subjects at that table have to be able to, everyone has to be able to relate to it. Because if you have certain subjects, the younger generation don't want to talk about that. Mm-hmm. The older generation have no idea what the younger generation is even talking about. So then you have actually that generation in the middle is actually the key to this whole thing. They're the key to keep the glue together, to keep everything together, to keep the family unity thing, because we're losing that. There's no question about that. It's not the same firehouse when I first came on to now. It's not even close.
Well, I want to go out there first and say that we still got general population in D.C. as far as bunk rooms are concerned.
Yeah,
Over at least over 30 engine, we don't have any cubicles.
What do you do with the
cubicles or anything.
snorers?
We boot them out, or we just I don't know. We're up to 7,500 runs this year, so we're not spending much time in the bunk room at night, anyways. But this is a job of legacies and traditions and things like that, and I think it's the job of every member of the IAFF. If you're sitting at that union meeting and you welcome in a new recruit class or something like that, to ingrain from them at an early age in the first part of their career, like it was for me, how important your union is.
Steve.
I can say in 11 years of me being in the federal fire service, when downtime happens, usually in the federal government, everybody disappears to their rooms. And you do have a lack of communication when that happens and a lack of family when that tends to happen.
Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, everyone has a different, approach and opinion and how things should be run in the station. I have a larger station. There's 10 of us on the floor constantly. We have a medic unit, a couple ambulances, engine and a truck. We also have the battalion chief and the EMS supervisor all running out of one station. There's a ton of people there constantly. But I always try and keep them either if they're in the study room working on something or in the kitchen. I want that crew integrity. I want those guys to be together working, learning things, and we have a range of ages. So, one person has never seen this movie or that movie. I want them to kind of get involved, and even if it's, not necessarily everything fire department, I want them to kind of find out about each one another, because then once we get into the scene, then we're a little bit comfortable with each other and we can work together.
Well, and you mentioned, a couple of you have mentioned about, finding out, what's the relevance, what is about the IAFF, the heritage of just not the IAFF, my union, which is the IAFF, what has it done? And part of this questioning and part of this understanding about how to better communicate, and Dave, I think you really captured it, is about how do we hand over what I call the heritage? Do our members have an appreciation where you're negotiating, Kelly, you're negotiating a contract over there in Prince George's County.
Right.
That probably we have members, shockingly, that complain about the result of a contract periodically.
Always, yes.
But do they even, right, but do they even have an understanding of that they have a contract and that someone provided that opportunity, and it wasn't their elected officials,
Right.
it wasn't their governor or their
Yeah.
city council or county executive, it was their union that actually created that opportunity.
I think
And do they
sometimes, yeah.
understand that?
Not take advantage, but the time and effort that a lot of the union representatives, the stewards, everyone puts in, they want to complain about it, but they don't want to put the time and effort to do something about it or learn more. They expect things to be done for them, but then they're not appreciative. I mean, we can't complain about a contract. We have a great job. Things could be so much worse, but not always is that seen throughout the department.
Well, excuse me.
Yeah, no,
But I was told by a guy, the reason why we got our pay raises is because of cost of living and interest rates. I said, what? I said, did you know that was negotiated and it didn't have to be given? I said, your local did that. The government, if they had their choice, you wouldn't have got anything. But for some reason, I couldn't convince them of that.
Wow.
And by the way, we're going to have a show about politics, so we won't do that here at this day. But I'm mentioning that because I'm looking at TJ, because he's come from two different fire department environments. One in Massachusetts,
Yes,
where collective bargaining and contracts is an old and strong tradition,
strong.
and then Fairfax County, which I'm going to selfishly say has done a very good job for its members, created a great department and pretty good benefits in retirement, but without the right of collective bargaining,
Right.
but understanding that they have to do it through the political arena.
Copy.
And they've got to get that board of supervisors to be able to make the right decisions, and that's their process. And so the question is, do our members have an understanding that it's just not necessarily out of the goodwill of government that some of these things happen, that it's brought about typically by the work of their union?
Yeah, I would answer that real briefly and say no. They think it just happens magically. There's just a fairy that makes it all happen, and they the bad part of that is they reap the benefits of all the union's hard work, and they don't know that they're not entitled to that. That is hard work that's done by people behind the scenes to negotiate, especially in Northern Virginia. Where I come from, you're right, strong union background. Everybody's in the union's strong, you know, very powerful. Here, it's not so much, so it takes a little more massaging and politicking, and sometimes members are upset that, you know, we're wearing this color t-shirt or supporting this person. They don't understand that your bread's buttered by the people that you're nice to. You get more flies with honey, and you have to, you know, work with these people, and there's give and take. It's just not your right to have these great wages, these great facilities, apparatus and benefits and time off with pay and things like that. That is done through negotiating, through compromise, through understanding. One hand washes the other. You know.
Well, when you think about all the presumption bills that are passed across both countries for heart, lung, now infectious disease, cancers, clearly the work of this IAFF at all levels. But the point of this show, do our members really, have we done a good enough job for them to connect with that they have that benefit because of the work of their union? You know, a question I always ask going into the station, now I have multiple departments here, and I always ask the question, do you have a deferred compensation plan in your station? And typically in your department. And then the answer is yes. And then I say, how many of you actually defer money, tax-free away, for yourselves? And then I would say, how many of you have any idea how that came about? And typically it doesn't matter where I am. The eyebrows would lift.
I don't know.
And they don't know that a union called the IAFF, many years ago in the early 80s, passed the federal legislation creating the section in the tax code that provides the opportunity to defer money. Now, I'm just using one little example of the work that kind of you all have referred to that really is the result of the work of this union. Do our members understand? And if they don't, the point of this show, at least this first show, is understanding how do we better communicate? How do we better pass on that heritage to them?
If when you get to recruit school or a newly hired firefighter, would it be possible maybe to give them a pamphlet that says, hey, this is what the IAFF has done over the years, just to educate you and educate every new firefighter that comes on board? Because, I mean, just an idea, you know?
Well, first of all, we do have the 90-year history of video. Maybe some have seen it, and most maybe, and some have not. But that question usually rests with each department.
Each local department.
When you have a department that's cooperative, there's a lot more opportunity for them to permit the union, if you will, to be able to engage our new recruits coming through. An idea that we've had limited success, and that is, could we make labor history, the IAFF history, part of recruit school? Not just addressing them, but actually make it a part. You got to learn everything else in recruit school. Should part of it being learning about the history of your union? And we've had some success with that, limited, but then it goes back to each department, and do they want to cooperate, if you will, with the union and allow that kind of discussion to take place? So we're trying to find these tools to close this gap, Dave, that you initially identified. We're talking about it now. I think this is one of the most critical things that we're facing as we're going with each subsequent generation, and that is losing this connection of the history of all of this.
Yeah. I mean, a station officer, if they were willing, they could be added into a rookie book for a rookie. A few questions, in regards, along with how do you know your engine, this, show me that you know some of the history of the union that, backs you in this job and you're a part of. It's something that even if it's not sanctioned by, your department or, that kind of thing in general, the station officer could always add that into it because it's part of what you're doing in-house. That's always an option.
I agree with Kelly. What we do is we have a HOTS section in recruit school in history of the fire service. so that people that came, not second generation like you or whatever, don't know what's a company, what's an engine company, what's a ladder, what's a stick, what's a truck, what's a hook. And part of their training is history of the fire service. So they will tell you the first engine company was Ben Franklin, the first union was, you know, Philly or whatever, the Boston's union 718. They know all that stuff because that's part of history of the fire service. So if you inserted the IAFF as part of that, like you said, and it would be an easy dovetail, and just say, hey man, you're required to understand this.
You know, we're focused on your careers. We're all in this together. I'm not going to pick on younger generations because we were all younger generations. In fact, I remember, you know, listening to Mike Captain in my early days and thinking, oh my God, I've got to pretend like I'm enthralled by all of his stories. So we've all gone through that. But there is something to be said of just the world changing in the way communication takes place. Somebody mentioned, it may have been you, Dave, earlier, or maybe you, Kelly, but somebody mentioned about it's so instantaneous, you know, and it happens now. And I suspect our members want to know what's happening now, not necessarily 4 weeks from now, even though they read their magazine, which is good to hear. Still, it's about how do we, you know, fill in the information gap and do what they expect from the rest of the world. So hopefully this show will be one of those opportunities. I want to thank, again, each of you for participating in our inaugural show, the IAFF Kitchen Table. Thank you. Stay safe on your jobs.